Hello. It is April 2nd, 2026. It's time for another geopolitics thought of the day. And today I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to respond to a video that was put out this morning by Francis Fukuyama, who you may have heard about. Um, this was on the Frankly Fukuyama YouTube channel, and I will post a link to it in the description. Essentially, Fukuyama argues that there is no Trump doctrine, that instead of an intentional, systematic outlook and plan for global affairs, uh, not even global affairs, for the United States government, the Trump administration has essentially psychologically driven foreign policy, a foreign policy that is driven by flightiness, by a profoundly mentally disorganized president with profoundly mentally disorganized advisors. And I think the truth of this is very hard to dispute. The Trump administration has been extremely disorganized and has lacked a lot of what I would think of as, uh, intentional actions. There's a failure to follow sort of a plan beyond a few steps. There's a failure to think about the long term ramifications, and there's an intensive focus on personalist attacks, bullying, machismo, all the hallmarks that I would describe as sort of all the hallmarks of a masculinist foreign policy. Masculinist states like Russia, like Hungary, countries that are attempting to sort of primp and preen and beat their chests. That's a very characteristic of the Trump administration's foreign policy. But I want to take maybe another position here, which is that Trump's decision making is guided by a long term foreign policy outlook within the United States that has sort of matriculated through the systems of power and through the popular understanding of the United States and its place in the world until we've reached the Trump administration. Um, I think the best analogy here is in Russian studies. We sometimes discuss uh, Slavophiles and Westernizers. The Slavophiles are believers in like a deep, innate, uh, peasant focused, agrarian, settled, deeply religious, orthodox outlook on the world, a mystical, dark, uh, almost blood and soil racialized a vision of Russia. And the Westernizers, who are associated with the more elite, liberal, capitalist, bourgeois, secular side of Russia. And a lot of Russian commentary, um, without going into, without problematizing these ideas, a lot of commentary on Russia involves discussing the way that Slavophiles and Westernizers as factions interact. I think we can talk about a similar sort of pair of outlooks in the United States. An oceanic outlook, which is very much the A.T. Mahan, uh, U.S. Great White Fleet, Teddy Roosevelt, Franklin Roosevelt, Eisenhower, progressing through a bipartisan agreement on foreign policy throughout the Cold War and through the sort of neoliberal policy that followed, in which the United States had sort of a presiding position, a presidential position in a community of nations bound by institutions. All of these people fundamentally understood the United States and its interests as being oceanic, thalassocratic, outwardly focused, and intent on building kind of a global, an empire sometimes, a context sometimes, a framework for international relations sometimes. The oceanic outlook believes that the United States' interests lie in economic prosperity and military security. The goals of this oceanic outlook have followed to include engagement with the world in a really profound way. But at the same time, there's sort of another America, a chthonic America, which is kind of analogous to the Slavophiles. This is the America of the revival tent. This is the deep country, Great Plains, to a certain extent, associated with places like West Virginia, the Dakotas. It's a picture of America as an inward empire, an inland empire. And this outlook views America's primary interests in the world as sort of moral and spiritual, as related to cultivating an independent or rugged self-sufficiency, independence, and is less concerned about the actual economic prosperity and military security of the United States. These things just aren't priorities to this worldview. Only the moral outlook. And I think that the classical example of this is the Westboro Baptist Church, who would carry around signs that would say things like, "Thank God for dead soldiers." Because they're not interested fundamentally in an America that has this global outlook. They don't want this. And I don't know exactly the chain of events that led to this sort of chthonic, inward-focused America reaching a place of prominence. But I think it was always a possibility because we have allowed its discourses to become sort of universal. I'm not sure why, but if you go to the left and you go to the right and you look at even progressives, people talk about a foreign policy of restraint, a foreign policy of disengagement. The Obama administration had a very real, realist bent to the way it interacted with the world. The prestige of international institutions took a big beating during the European financial crisis. And just sort of in general, there's a sense that only strong, spiritually and morally strong and dynamic countries are capable of action. I don't think this is true, but there's a very sort of popular narrative that exists around this. And if we look at it in this light, we can see that the actual success or failure of Donald Trump's military engagements is less important than the fact that he has, in their view, the moral capacity to engage in them. I saw an interview from the U.S. Naval Institute the other day, which was an interview with General Frank McKenzie, who was a former head of U.S. Central Command, and he said something that I think was really enlightening. He said that Donald Trump is the first president who is not able to be deterred by Iran's ability to fire missiles at U.S. bases in the region and by Iran's ability to close the Strait of Hormuz. In other words, from General McKenzie's perspective, the problem here is not a physical problem, a material problem of weighing the costs and the benefits of negotiating with Iran versus war with Iran. It's a question of the moral ability to bear the weight of war with Iran, the willingness to commit to the path of action that was suggested in the song Bomb Iran, which went around over 50 years ago, right? Was it over 50 years ago? 45, 46 years ago? There was a very popular um, edit or cover of the Beach Boys song Barbara Ann with the lyrics changed to Bomb Iran. Bomb, 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 bomb Iran. Bomb Iran has been the rallying cry of the American conservative movement for a long time, and it's been linked to a sense that successive American administrations have lacked moral fortitude. The moral fortitude to carry out what they view is an existentially necessary course of action. I don't exactly know how to evaluate this movement. I think movements that are fundamentally irrationalist like this have a tendency to self-destruct, and they certainly appear to be highly destructive. What the future holds for this kind of movement is a little bit difficult to tell. I think there's a when prophecy fails effect where the sense that America's problems are caused by a moral lack is going to be frustrated by the fact that, Trump's willingness to attack Iran is not really actually going to benefit the country at all. This magical relationship between Trump as a morally vivacious Fisher King and the United States as this sort of ailing Fisher Kingdom, this is a magical understanding of the world, and it's one that is just not going to result in courses of action, in political and geostrategic outcomes that are good for the United States. But is it an organized, systematic doctrine? I believe it is. And I think that once you start to think in these terms and you start to look through the kinds of media, the kinds of foreign policy theory that are being created by the American right wing through outlets like National Review, outlets like Fox News, conservative commentators, you can see that their outlook has actually developed very systematically and within an insular system over the past 40 or 50 years. And the only thing that is really remarkable about the Trump administration, in the light of decades and decades of conservative political theory, is that Trump is the only person who is actually stupid enough to believe in conservative political theory. Thank you. That was your geopolitics thought for the day for April 2nd, 2026.